this new season of the Wednesday Morning Roundtable. I'm Guy Cosentino with the College Foundation. We'd like to welcome you to being back in person. And we're starting and we're trying. Before we start our program today and adapting to the times, we're delighted to be here for the first time in Westminster. It's a beautiful church. I know they're missing some pews over here, but behind me is one of the most fantastic stained glasses in central New York, and we really appreciate Pastor Harry for letting us be here, as well as I know we have several of the members of the church. Susan Martini, Joe Fandrick is here, and I see Jack Hardy over there who's going to make us all sound good to help us set up here. So we also want to thank our sponsors. We want to thank Tompkins Trust, who has been a longtime supporter of the Wednesday Morning Roundtable, as well as the Allen Foundation, the Fred L. Emerson Foundation, and new to the program, thanks to the bid and Stephanie DeVito and the staff over there, we now have Wegmans as a sponsor. So obviously this is a new season for us. Obviously we're in a period of adaptation and change. So our plan today was to have a different topic, because later today they're going to redistrict list, maps are going to be released, and we'll see how Cayuga County fares and all of that. But with everything that has gone on this summer, we wanted to change with the times. We all thought you weren't going to wear masks this morning. We all thought that everybody would be in school and there would be no discussion of positivity rates, and that everything would go smoothly well with buildings open on time and every construction project that anybody was attempting to be done, because wood prices would have come down and construction would have gone easily. That is not the case. So one of the decisions we made last month was to change the agenda to talk about what we have talked about for many years, and that is how our schools and education getting together and working to open and keep students, whether at the secondary or middle school or elementary. But what we are delighted to have with us both President Brian Durant, who is just finished his 6th year at Cayuga Community College. Obviously, there's a lot of change going on at Cayuga. You only have to do, I think, 3 Frisbee throws from here to see a beautiful culinary institute that is opened that he's going to talk a little bit about. But he's also has 2 campuses that he's responsible for, and getting not only work done at the lower level with our students and our faculty, but he also has to deal with the state of New York and SUNY and downward pressures on that, and I'm sure he'll talk about that as well. And while he is no stranger to any of you or to this panel, I think the all-time winner for people who've addressed the Wednesday Morning Roundtable is Superintendent of Schools Jeff Perazzola from Auburn, and talk about transition and challenges that he's facing. If you read this morning's paper, he had more than 30, and he'll tell you a little bit more about that, positive cases in the district between students and faculty, and that is struggles that he has to deal with, as well as building projects that, due to COVID, have not been working as well as he had hoped. And if you'd like to see the inside of Genesee Street Elementary School, you can just park in front on Genesee Street and look in. It hasn't changed, by the way, in 50 years, but it is changing now. And so one of the challenges that he has had is a bond issue was passed last year, and they have made some changes, and making changes both from an air quality, but more importantly from a public safety point of view. So we've asked both to talk about what the challenges have been as that they've tried to open up or do projects this year, how they're dealing with COVID on their campuses, and how to keep everyone safe. So out of a flip of a coin, we're going to go in alphabetical order and have Brian Durant, who once he's up here can take off his mask, and we'll have him talk about what's going on at Cayuga, both at the Auburn and Fulton campuses, and then we'll have Q&A after we hear from Jeff Perazzola. Doctor.
Good morning, everyone. Good to be with you. Thanks for letting me go first. I appreciate that. Before I get started today, certainly my pleasure to be here, represent the college. Continues to be my pleasure to serve as the president of Cayuga Community College. With us in the room is one of our trustees, Tony Francis-Shelley, happens to be in the front, and also a member of the Roundtable is Dr. Ron Cantor, the college's provost and vice president for academic affairs. So maybe if I have to turn to him for some detail, we can later on in some of the questions. But I'm sure we have others joining us through the distance. Thanks so much for putting this together, providing access both near and far for the Roundtable. Certainly, I think the last time we addressed many of you was in the state of the college or the state of the education of the county back in the spring. Many of you participated. And, we'll start a little bit looking at last year as we move ahead to this one. Obviously, much of our focus has been on continuing the operations of the institution and trying to have continuity of business to provide as seamless as possible access to education for our students. That has been a challenging time because many of the students who signed up for us 2 years ago or even a year ago, their hope was to not be primarily remote. Their hope was to be engaged both in and out of the classroom and have what some of us would consider a more traditional higher education experience. So since the spring of 2020, the college at that time, we went to full remote and continued that way for much of that spring and that summer. And last year, we, through the guidance of SUNY and the requirements for social distancing and mask wearing, and of course at that time it was, pre-vaccine, we, for the entirety of the 2020-21 year, which for us ended just at the end of August, we were primarily an online institution. Select few courses offered in person, primarily those that had hands-on components like nursing or manufacturing, or other courses where we believed in the lab sciences that the experience within the labs was necessary to be able to provide the opportunity to achieve the learning outcomes as designed. But that's from the education piece. From the college's business model, of course, we were focused on what everyone else has been focused on in society, testing and making sure we achieve compliance from the state of New York and SUNY, really primarily focused on things like sanitation, things like social distancing, mask wearing, and those were what most businesses have been trying to deal with when the pause initiative was there and as we opened. But as we tried to build momentum and looking ahead to current year as we stand today and as we look ahead, really the college had to be focused on, two major factors. The first, of course, is our students. We really wanted and believed it was necessary that our students deserved to have more opportunities face-to-face, if they so choose, to re-engage in a more in-person learning environment. That was our goal one, if the state would allow. Goal number two, of course, was that we needed to set up a system or infrastructure, continue it, to support the mandatory testing, which I'll speak about in a minute, and that would support the pending vaccination requirements that will come from SUNY. And that was where a great deal of our planning with our trustees and leadership group at the college had really been focused from, January, February, up and through the start of the semester, which was a couple of weeks ago. So as we stand here today in fall 21, the college really is focused on having its doors back open and allowing all services in many of our classes face-to-face for students. It was a tremendous sort of shock for us at the institution a little bit in the last week of August when the parking lots started to fill up again and the infectious energy of our students reemerged in our hallways. Yet still having a global pandemic and the stress and management required of it above our shoulders and on our minds. And so when we looked at that, we had built in an infrastructure that worked with our local health department, which, by the way, have been absolutely tremendous in guiding us educators and how to provide leadership. But what we focused on were some main principles for how we could reopen. And the main principles in which we reopened at the time is that certainly we encourage everyone to be vaccinated. We believe it's in the best interest of the organization, best interest of all of our employees and students, and we continue to support that effort and advocacy. From a practical standpoint, we at the college have instituted for nearly a year now, mandatory testing requirements for everyone who's on campus, either weekly or bi-weekly. And those that are required to have it weekly at this point in time are those that are unvaccinated. The individuals who provide proof of vaccination are still required to test every other week. That's an institutional policy and requirement that we monitor, and people who fail to comply are held responsible. In addition to that, for the testing protocol, we continue to wear masks. Masks are required on our campuses. And we have also limited our in-person interactions, that you can only have them if there are fewer than 10 people in a room, must maintain social distancing, must maintain wear a mask. What's interesting about it, and I think it was alluded to in Guy's opening comments, is 2 months ago, our plan was different. The variant, other pressures, and the infectious rate of the community warranted a change. And if there's any consistent message that you all are experiencing in your own businesses and that we've experienced certainly in ours, and I'm sure Jeff will mention it, the nimbleness and the comfort that we all have to have in saying we cannot lead in absolutes has been one of the biggest changes that I think people need to make. The comfort of a group of people that work for us or attend school with us and our students, they want to know from myself or others, well, what should I expect? And we've had to change. Normally, we want to give people that comfort. Well, that's what you can expect when you go to college. This is what you can expect if you enroll with us, if you choose to enroll with us. And what we've had to do, of course, is we've had to flip and say, today, this is what we're doing. But be mindful that if the circumstances or directives change, compliance is what our responsibility is today, no matter what it may be. And I'm proud to say that over the last, 18, 19 months, it has been impressive to me how more comfortable the college community has gotten with the fact that we can't live in the comfort of an absolute. We can't in society right now either, right? So I think what's important for people to recognize is even when we're giving our updates today about what we're doing, you may see us in the street next week and say, yep, or read in the paper, well, we just said we're doing this. Well, because that's what we're doing today. But information, new strategies may emerge, or requirements may emerge that have to do that. And I think that that's been frustrating for some, but the resiliency of others has really overpowered that. And that's been impressive to me. So one of the things that happened about a week before school started, though, in addition to the testing, is and we knew this was coming, SUNY had issued a guidance of a policy statement that once a vaccine was approved by the FDA, it would be a requirement of all students that they must be vaccinated. And once that guidance came in, I believe it was the last week of August, or maybe the third week of August, we immediately communicated to our students that within 35 days of that communication, all students at Cayuga Community College and any SUNY school, this is not just Cayuga, must be vaccinated, provide proof of vaccination, if he or she have any on-campus obligation. Whether that be they're a tutor, but there are other things online, whether they're taking courses online, whether they're an athlete, whatever it may be. And so right away, we as an institution had to move our focus from the testing protocol, which continues to be a priority, and add to it the advocacy and monitoring and tracking of trying to move thousands of students and individuals to see where they're vaccinated or not. If they are not vaccinated after that 35-day window per policy, they will be removed from the institution. something taken as most seriously as it can be, right? So our advocacy and support to our students early on was that if this is, perhaps you should take advantage of some add drop opportunities for some online options, or look at other courses, or so on and so forth. But it has been a real priority of us the last 2 weeks that although we knew it would come at some point, when it came, we had to redirect our energies and focus on it. At this point, we are capturing the data of the vaccination rates of our employees, our faculty and staff. And we will, although not mandated at this point, we are working and looking towards a possible mandatory vaccination of our entire college community. It's equitable for our students. We think it's supporting the equity of the continuity of business and what we're trying to do here, and we think it provides good community leadership as necessary. Obviously, there is an exemption process for certain measures, and it's there. But that continues to be it. So one of the other, so really for us, when it comes to it, we're open. When it comes to community use, we're being very restrictive. Some of the times we've had community use want to come in and use our facilities. We're saying no just because we feel as though it's not in our best interest, or we may not be able to add on the extra cleaning or sanitation necessary. It's not because we don't want to be a community resource. We would try to accommodate what we can. And some of our consistent practice at this point is if a group wants to come in and use our facility, we'd ask them to be vaccinated because they're not in our testing protocol. And our testing protocol is something very important to us. So, I know part of the queue today was to set up and really talk about what we're doing for COVID. And that's our really main focus at this point. We are open. We have many courses face-to-face. We have many options for people to go online still. Our services can both be supported virtually and in person. And our students are working towards mandatory vaccinations. And as an institution, we continue to take it very seriously with social distancing and mask wearing, like everyone else is too. All those measures find us in compliance and in support of our local health officials. We have done vaccination drives on our campus. We have done community testing on our campus. We'll continue to do so as that. One of the other cues we got, though, is what type of construction or things have you been able to had to do in the time? Well, really, like every other business and organization, we've had to take measures with certain plexiglass or certain moving of desks and spaces for social distancing and so on. And we feel like we've accomplished that a great deal. When moments arise where there's concern, we try to accommodate employees or people as best that we can, and we feel like we've been able to do a pretty good job being proactive with that and also supporting any request that comes in. But where we've really invested our resources, and this goes to the academic area with Dr. Cantor's leadership, is in the technology to enhance flexible modality and engagement for our students. And when we talk about that from our perspective at the college, we can call them high flex, we can call them synchronous instruction, where we're providing more opportunities today than we did pre-pandemic for learners to sign up for courses that they can actually log in just like this, be engaged with someone who's lecturing, and in real time be able to ask questions and engage. So it's a different form of online versus a self-paced learning or assignment or task-based learning or asynchronous. This is a synchronous instruction live in real time. You're just from a virtual place. We now have ability to maximize our campuses with each other, providing remote and in-person options. We have our opportunities to do both in-person and high flex that are outside virtual. If there's been another positive other than the resiliency of our community and the fact people are more comfortable with the unknown, the other thing that's been incredible has been the innovation of our faculty and staff when it comes to welcoming technology, modernizing the teaching techniques and delivery to match their gifts and skills and deliver the curriculum. Those impacts will be long-lasting for us as an institution and modernizes the way in which we offer our courses for students to engage. And they took the lead. They embraced it. So we invested last year approximately $350,000 in institutional technology. I'm looking for Ron for a little affirmation on that, thank you. About $350,000 in institutional technology to support those types of techniques. Guy asked us to give a little update on our budget costs. Last year, between the investment of technology, some physical plant requirements, and all the staffing that we needed to bring in to support testing, and the cost for the tests themselves cost our institution approximately $750,000 that we were basically able to leverage CARES funds to cover most of it, the original CARES funds, which we're grateful for. As we look ahead to this year in our budget, just on testing protocol and just on the staffing to manage and monitor that and the cost for the tests themselves, we have earmarked in our budget approximately $350,000 to cover the costs of our program. And that's an institution our size. The districts and other organizations are much larger than ours, and that's what we are focused on. So from a COVID perspective, we continue to ask for patience with our students on what they're able to take and enjoy. We're working to try to bring student life in an enhanced way. We're certainly hopeful that they'll continue to have normalcy, and we'll continue to build what the new normal will be. And I know later on we'll talk a little bit more about what's ahead. But the college also has not been, frozen in just COVID. It was alluded to earlier. We had the great pleasure to open with now Governor and the SUNY Chancellor and many local elected officials and partners our Culinary Institute this summer. Part of the DRI project, again, would not be here without the support of the DRI. That course had welcomed a full cohort of 12 students and several non-credit offerings that are full. Non-credit offerings for us, providing opportunities to connect with local craft, the craft beer industry, with wineries, with local restaurants, other leadership, bringing the community in to engage in a college facility or to engage in the college or with each other is a big piece of this vision. So don't just hear a cohort of 12, which is full for us, that was our target, as just 12 people. A number of entities are full. I think we have 2 scheduled next week that it's at max capacity and has been. We had programs that we put out that were full within a first day of registration. We're going to continue to maximize that resource and build upon it and partner with other entities as we can, and we're very excited for that already. In addition to that, with our trustees' leadership, support from private investors and our college foundation, we broke ground last week on building a brand new advanced manufacturing institute on our Fulton campus, focusing on aligning curriculum with local manufacturers in the Oswego County who have been part of the visioning for that for a number of years. And that will be rolling out a number of credit and non-credit programs, serving the workforce as early as January and spring of 22. And also later this fall, we have completed the design work. We've had recent support from our county and recent support from other groups, and we're looking forward to putting out to bid later this fall the construction project for the Workforce Development Center of the building formerly known as the Cornell Cooperative Extension Building. And that vision, of course, is one that we are focused on to be able to centralize and build upon the identity of this community for workforce development, economic development, and personal and professional growth. We know there are tentacles out there that are impressive in our chamber, in CETA, and with BOCES, and so many other entities that are committed to that. But we will continue to build upon our own baseline to be able to add new programs, support the community, and to really align ourselves as even better partners with workforce development and growth within the city of Auburn, Cayuga County, and really a regional effort. And the last thing I'll say, and I'll turn it over to Jeff, is we at the college, we're committed not just focused on Cayuga County, not just focused on Oswego County, but we recognize that the scale and the opportunity that we have, given the fact that we are a shrinking institution at certain moments, given the fact that our demographics in our county sometimes are shrinking, we continue to be active in aligning ourselves with other institutions to enhance programs and services and to be able to offer some scale or at least access to other things by leveraging partnerships both with private industry, public partners like school districts, like other colleges and others. And a big piece of our visioning as we go forward is going to be about partnerships, sharing services, and enhancing what we do, not just alone, but with each other and for each other. Thank you all.
I just got. Yeah, you go ahead and sit down and relax. Again, thank you, Mr. Cosentino, for having me today. And Dr. Durant, I would say we're very fortunate to have you leading our higher education here in Auburn. The work that you do is amazing for our children, for our growing adults. You are so vested, and we are very fortunate to have you. I don't know if I'm going to be as, I don't know if mine is so cheery, my little speech here, but I want to thank everyone for coming today. Thank you for those that are online as well. Boy, it's been a difficult year and a half. We've had a lot of issues that we've dealt with, not just in Auburn, every school district in New York State. But, just a little recap. I don't like to talk a lot about what happened last year because we're trying to get away from that. But as you know, we were remote for most of the year. This year, in June, things looked a little different than what we're facing right now. Our numbers went down. We were lucky to have 1 or 2 cases in the month of June, students or staff. And we were getting ready to roll out a capital project and start taking our buildings apart. And it looked like we had smooth sailing to get that work done. And the question kept being asked to the contractors, are we going to have enough workforce? Are our materials going to be on time? Answer was, yeah, we're looking good. We're looking good. June, we were in a much different place. We were having sporting events outside. Yeah, we couldn't have our students there. We had two spectators per participant, but it was a start. We were starting back up. It was a great feeling to start seeing our kids come back to school in March, April, May, June. So, we really thought that we were putting a lot of this behind us as we started planning for this coming school year. And then the month of July hit. And, like Dr. Durant said, we got a new strand. The Delta variant comes through. And we start seeing an increase in cases. And not only that, we started seeing children start being affected by the Delta strand. And by the month of August, early August, our numbers started really going up. I think I went pretty much the whole month of June and half of July with no contact from the health department. Love the health department, but when their number comes across my phone, I cringe every day. And unfortunately, right now, I'm cringing about 10 to 15 times a day. So, it's, and like Dr. Durant said, our health department is doing a fantastic job helping us lead and helping us plan and move our plans forward. So for Auburn, we did have to institute some new rules that we did not think we were going to have to. And, of course, as you're all sitting here looking at me, face mask is one of them. And there's a lot of controversy over wearing face masks. But the state made it very easy because the New York State Department of Health mandated all mask wearing in public schools. So we do have to follow those guidelines. Social distancing, disinfecting. I'm going to get into some of the other things that our school district has brought in to help create as many barriers as we can so that our children and our staff stay healthy and safe. The cost of what we've incurred has been tremendous. Our numbers are relatively close to what Dr. Durant expressed in his, but ours is a little bit higher. With 4,000 students, with over 600 staff members, PPE alone, disinfecting. We did get some shields. We brought things into our schools that were very costly. Last year, from September to probably about April, we probably spent around $1.2 million in supplying PPE and putting barriers in place for our children. But the real cost is this year because, as you know, Auburn was fortunate. We received $13 million in federal monies from the government, and we are using that money to create positions such as teaching assistant positions, school counselors, social workers. Our children have experienced a lot of difficulties the last year and a half. And I'm not talking just academic. The learning loss is one aspect, but the social emotional piece is completely a whole different aspect of what our children have faced the last year and a half. Auburn's a little bit different than some of our smaller rural schools that surround our county. Some of our rural schools were facing maybe 5% total remote students. When we started the year last year, we were at 27%. We had over 1,000 students that were completely remote, which means we couldn't provide services to those students. We couldn't get our eyes on our children. We couldn't see what their needs were. Some of our kids did participate in remote learning, but many did not. We had to do a lot of home visits. We had to do a lot of phone calls to try to get kids engaged. My main goal is Dr. Durant was talking about many goals that they had this year. I had one goal and one goal in place, and that was to get our children back to school in person, period. No matter what it took, we needed small city school districts across the state needed to get our children back into school in person. Because for some of our children, poverty played a major role in our children not coming back to school. So we had to take that scenario completely out of it and say, we have to bring our kids back in. So that's one thing that I had many discussions with small city school district superintendents and commissioner of education about messaging and mixed messages, making sure that our message was all students needed to be back into school in person because that's how they learn best. But it's also because we can take care of their needs as well. So when we talk about the extra cost, this year alone, we've spent about $2 million on adding more personnel into more staff members. We're talking teaching assistants, we're talking counselors, we're talking teachers, we're talking teacher aides. It's pretty much the whole gamut, not only to look at that learning gap loss, but to take care of those social emotional needs. One other thing that we did purchase this year is air purifiers. So we ordered air purifiers for 2 of them in every classroom throughout our district. And we were lucky enough to get 8 on that, but the cost was around $350,000 just for the air purifiers. We have them in our cafeterias, in our gymnasiums, our auditoriums, and again, 2 in every classroom. And those air purifiers are being used all over the United States. We're fortunate enough that the company that sells them is right in Pulaski, New York. So after they got done working with the Syracuse City School District, they reached out to me, and we met. They showed us what they did, and they're amazing. And they take all the particles that are floating in the air, goes through the filtration system, and shoots out completely clean air with no particles. So that is something that I thought was very important for us to purchase. So, you know, the cost of what we're going through, we've been very fortunate, Dr. Durant, that we received multiple. We got 2,000 testing kits last year for free from the state. We're still using those testing kits. And I'm going to get into a little bit of what our testing requirements are as well. So when we're talking about the cost, it has been very costly for the last year and a half. But again, we've been fortunate enough to receive federal funding. And also our local health department has received funding too that they are using and giving to school districts. We don't know exactly what the amount is, but they're helping us with testing kits as well. Our cost that we incur is the overtime to have nurses available to do them in the evenings. So most of our bigger cost is a lot of staff directed. We do have a lot of overtime with our custodial staff because we do extra disinfecting every week in our schools. So that there's so many hidden costs that you don't even realize that are connected with COVID. But that leads me to our capital project. So I had to make one of the worst calls a couple of weeks ago to tell our families at Genesee and Casey Park that we had to delay the opening of school for one day. And that is because our capital project is not on the timeline that, of course, was promised to us months ago. And there's never been a capital project that's been on time anyways, but with COVID, it's really delayed us. And what are some of the bigger issues with that? Some of the bigger issues is the delay of materials. There's certain products that companies are working at 50% capacity. They're not pushing out the materials that are needed to be pushed out. But the other issue is our contractors cannot find workers to come in. Usually, the last week in August, if you see a capital project going on in a building, you walk in, there's 100 people working, trying to just get everything completed, finished, buttoned up. We had 4 or 5 workers in our buildings that last week of August. But here's where I want to give the real shout out, because the shout out goes to our staff, our custodians, our teachers, our technology department, our principals. Labor Day weekend, on Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Eric Francisco, my director of facilities, and I worked 36 hours just in those 3 days alone, because we had to get our children back in the schools. And we didn't have contractors in there, so we had to do the cleaning, we had to do the moving of the furniture, but our teachers came in throughout the entire weekend to make sure they set up the classrooms, because they have such high expectations and they wanted it special for our children, especially with our children not being in school for the last year and a half. So multiple teachers were in their classrooms, getting their classrooms ready over Labor Day weekend. Our custodians, probably 80% of our custodial staff, worked for 2 weekends simultaneously just to get those classrooms put back together. And our technology department was running around, hooking up computers for our teachers, getting our smart boards ready. If it wasn't for them, we probably would have been delayed at least another week. So, just a huge thank you for all of them. What was our capital project about? Our capital project was about security and safety, like Mr. Cosentino said. Vestibules, secured vestibules for when people come in, they can't just walk right into our buildings. They have to be we push a button that releases a door that lets them into the main office. So security was the main piece, but we did make some tweaks and started to work more on our ventilation system. We've actually shifted some more money towards the ventilation system to make sure that we have great air quality in our schools, because I don't think COVID is going away overnight. I think this is something that we're going to continue to see, so we've got to continue to plan and stay ahead of it. So we have made some tweaks with our ventilation, with our capital project. I've talked a lot about some of the COVID restrictions that we do have. Mask wearing. Social distance is very difficult in our school district. And one of the reasons why it's a little bit more difficult for an Auburn than a smaller district around us is the number of students we have. We have around 4,100 students, and social distancing 25 kids in one classroom is very difficult to do. We're doing the best we can. We have our desks set at 3 feet apart, and in some areas we have to shift them in different corners just to make sure that we can try to keep that social distancing at 3 feet. But our biggest issue that we face is in our cafeterias. There's no way that we can socially distance 6 feet for our children to eat. And I've had parents call me with concerns, but please remember the social distancing guidelines are 3 feet or best we can to ensure that we can bring all of our children back for in-person learning. So we try our best to spread out our children the best we can, but unfortunately, because of the number of students and because of the lack of space, it's a little bit more difficult for a school district like Auburn to meet those requirements at that capacity. So we are continuing to do our best with that. We are continuing to disinfect. We're continuing to use our purifiers. But testing is something that sort of got dumped in our lap the Friday before school started. So we were already a couple steps ahead. We had already sent out an email to find out how many of our staff members were vaccinated. And out of our response, we had about 575 responses out of 620 employees, and 90.8% of our staff is vaccinated, which is a great number, but we still have to provide testing. So today is actually our first day of testing for our unvaccinated staff members. So what we've done is our staff members can go get tested right in the schools that they work before kids come or after the students leave. And on Wednesday evenings, starting next Wednesday with this, any student that would like to be tested, so any parent that would like to have their child tested or children tested, can come into the high school at the SAC between 4 and 6 o'clock and have their child tested. We're also a unique piece, as Dr. Durant mentioned, is we subcontract our busing and our food services. So every vendor that comes into our school has to be tested if they're not vaccinated. So we also have to align all of that up as well. So our bus drivers will be coming in to be tested on Wednesday evenings. Our cafeteria workers will go during the school day like our regular staff does. But we also have outside organizations that come into our buildings as well, as BTW, the YMCA, Cayuga County Mental Health. We have to provide testing for all of the people that step into our buildings. So we're setting that up as well for next Wednesday and having all of our outside partners being tested as well. And so, again, we have to have proof of either your vaccine or you have to be tested once a week, and we have to have proof of that. And again, if it's not carried out, then you will not be able to work. Just like Dr. Durant said, we have the same standards set up as well. So the last thing that Guy asked us to speak about is a little bit about technology. So school districts transformed how we educate in a matter of months. From in-person children sitting in front of us to completely closing our schools down and have children at home. We in Auburn have been working for the last 6 years on a one-to-one initiative, which means every child will have access to a Chromebook in our district. Well, we sped that process up very quickly, especially when COVID hit. So our students last year, any student who needed a computer was given a computer by the school district. But it's not just the device itself. It's that digital divide that we talk about. Children that don't have access, internet access at home. That's a whole nother piece of what we deal with. So in our district, we had about 200 hotspots that we had ourselves, but we reached out to BOCES and we secured another 500 hotspots for our students because we gave out last year, I believe, around 850 hotspots to our students and their families so the kids could at least get on the internet for remote learning. What is our scare right now? Our scare is that at any time the health department could switch us back to remote learning. Cayuga County's spread is one of the highest in New York State. From last Tuesday to yesterday evening, we've had 35 positive COVID cases in our school district amongst students and staff. That's an alarming number. Like I said, if you remember after Thanksgiving last year, we got to a point that we lost so many staff members due to quarantining and positive COVID testing that we had to shut down our schools because we didn't have enough staff. One fortunate thing for us this year is the quarantining rules have changed a little bit because, of course, us being vaccinated. So we're not quarantining as many students and staff as we had to last year, which is really helping us to keep our educators in the buildings and more students in our buildings. But again, we got to continue to make smart choices and move forward. And like Brian said, we have to adjust and monitor everything that we do every single day. What we're doing today could change drastically by next week. But one thing that we've got to be prepared is that if we do go remote, that every child will have access to their Chromebook, because right now our children do not have an assigned Chromebook because we're waiting for 4,000 cords to come in that we ordered about a month ago. And they're being shipped out on Friday, so we should have them by Monday or Tuesday next week. So the push next week will be to our 7th through 12th graders to assign the Chromebooks to all our children, and then start down at the elementary grade level, starting at 6th grade and working our way down. So that in the case that we do have to shift to remote, all of our Chromebooks will be out, everything will be moving forward. But our teachers have learned a new way of teaching, and that hasn't gone away. We don't want kids sitting in front of computers to learn, but technology can enhance what we do in the classroom. And Google Classroom is a great tool for our children to continue the work that they're doing in class, to go home and complete assignments. So we've learned some good things through COVID, but I'm ready for it to be over. And I can hear an amen on that. So with that, I thank you again. And again, we will continue to keep our community updated. I do weekly updates to all of our families on any changes. I give them current stats that we're facing. Those things will continue throughout the year. But again, thank you for listening.
So I think Jesse's going to take one of the mics and walk around, and both gentlemen are 6 feet apart, and we'll do a couple of Q&A just to follow up on a couple of things. First of all, thank you for talking to the group, and let's start with some money issues. First of all, you both talked about how you're getting CARES Act money and federal and state money. Dr. Grant, where did that money go with what you've received, and more importantly, or just as importantly, Superintendent, what happens when it runs out? You say you're hiring new staff. At some point, that money runs out. So does that mean tax increases at some point? So I'll let either of you have the mic, and then you can pass it.
Is this one on?
Yes.
Great. Yeah, so Jeff mentioned 13 plus million for the district. The college received approximately $6 million in federal aid. And those funds for us have been focused on in really the 3 different phases of the allocation, right? If we simplify, we can just call it CARES 1, 2, and 3, although there are different names, not to minimize the legislation. And so for us, the institution, the first chunk of money, well, it was approximately $750,000 on the institutional side. And that money was used to really cover the investment that I mentioned earlier of technology, and also covering the cost of staff that was needed to bring in to do the testing and sanitation and other things like that, as well as the actual cost for the test administration themselves. But in addition to the institutional money, we also received several $millions for students and student aid. And those funds have been able to help support the hardships of students that they've been experiencing during COVID, both in the liability for supporting their costs of attending college, or their livelihoods outside of college, for food and rent and other things like that too. So it's been able to get dispersed through the other programs. So each of those programs are distinct. There's a program set up for students for emergency funding and support that's being, directed through the state of New York, that we were able to get out the allocation accordingly. And then the money for the college itself. The biggest chunk of that money at this point, Guy, to just be brief about it, is one of the categories for us to utilize those funds was for loss of revenue. And the institution last year experienced a decline in enrollment that equates to a loss of revenue. And we're able to recognize those funds now just as a revenue source. And for us, we're able to bring that in, likely through the audit process. That'll go to the fund balance for now, but we reinvested a significant number of those dollars to balance our budget in our current year and to be able to look ahead. We did not raise tuition this year. It was important to us as a college and from our trustees to not raise tuition. We did not introduce any new fees this year, even though we were a shrinking organization. We leveraged some of the CARES funds so we didn't have to do that, and we helped try to set ourselves up to manage the increased incurred expenses this year.
That's quite a complex question you're asking, so I will come next month and we could do the whole show on budget. So, yes, we were fortunate enough to receive $13 million in CARES money, and what we've done is we've split that up through a 3-year period, and we've dedicated certain monies for different aspects. Like I said, $2 million in staff for this year, next year, and the following year, which is a total of $6 million out of the $13 million. We've done ventilation improvements. We did summer school for the next 3 years. We've included. So and technology, of course, was a big piece of that as well. So our biggest piece is we don't like to use federal monies for permanent positions, because after the 3-year period, where does that money come from? So I'm going to go back to a little quick foundation aid answer. And if you've listened, the state said last year, within 2 to 3 years, every school district will be receiving their complete foundation aid that has been given to them. For Auburn, that's about a $6.5 million increase a year. That would certainly cover those increased positions. But what we did is we had honest conversations with our new hires, and we said to them, this is like a grant-funded position. We have funding, we know, for 3 years for this position. We do not know what it looks like after that, but what we've done is we've continued to make smart decisions with budgeting. Our fund balance is high. It's over the recommended state percentage, and we're hoping to be able to use that money for years 4 and 5 to be able to secure these staff members for at least 5 years. So that's what our plan is as we move out. But as we receive more foundation aid, we'd like to take those staff and build that right into our budget.
So, by the way, Brian Duran is very happy. He won WMR bingo because you said foundation aid. There was a center square. I'll let Jessie move around if she has people who have questions, but I wanted to follow up on, so the last time I saw you was the night before you became a spackler at the elementary schools. It was a maroon game, first game there. What are you both doing on the sports front? Cayuga County and Auburn are sports communities. What are you doing? We're doing sports. Outside, again, we try to keep people socially distanced, which is very challenging at Howland Stadium, especially when you have 2,000-3,000 people there. But we're doing the best we can. Outside sports are moving as planned. The only sport that we have indoors right now is volleyball, so they have to follow the rules, social distancing, face masks. As far as outside organizations, Little League used our fields throughout the summer this year, our baseball fields. We are letting outside organizations use our facilities on the outside of our facilities. We are not letting organizations inside our buildings because of what we talked about, the cost for disinfecting and those things. So again, we're moving forward with sports, and knock on wood, we've been very fortunate. There's been a lot of teams throughout New York State that have been shut down because of a COVID positive case and quarantining other team members. But fortunately for us, we have not faced that.
up to this point, and hopefully we do not. But yes, we are moving forward with all of our sports.
Yeah, similarly to, we're moving ahead with our sports at this point too. One of the things that happened at the college level, though, was last year with the uncertainty and not being able to have athletics for most of the year. That, for us, that's the difference sometimes of choosing whether you're going to go to a college or not. And so, unfortunately, we weren't able to be so committed early on this year as well, and we had some other circumstances. Two of our teams this fall, our men's and women's soccer team, did not have the adequate numbers to participate. So we're continuing to focus on recruit to restart those programs again next year. But our women's volleyball program is off this fall, and they're off and going this fall, and we look like we're in place for our basketball teams to begin practice here around October 1st to get those seasons going. So we're fully committed to it. Obviously, it's a big piece of our visioning as well, and unfortunately, that is one of the difficulties of the pandemic that slows the momentum in that area.
So two quick questions for each that have been texted to me. One of you mentioned the idea of science. In your particular case, Dr. Durant, you're not at faculty yet. Obviously, OCC dealt with it yesterday with their board of trustees. Is this something you'll look for direction from the state of New York and SUNY, or is this something that will be made at all 62 individual campuses, which is, to me, crazy?
So the mandatory vaccines for employees. So, at Cayuga, we're looking at it now. Although we know that certainly the state and others can be, could make a decision that could impact our requirement, but it is a direction we're moving in at Cayuga Community College. Onondaga made the announcement yesterday. That was an independent decision that they made as an organization through their appropriate process, and we here at Cayuga are looking to do a similar one in time, and we're moving through that now at this point. And if we get to that resolution, we will work through our trustees and make the announcement at an appropriate time.
So thank you, Superintendent. One of the communications that's gone out from you and from the health department is if you have a student who is not feeling well, don't come to class. So I want to clarify this. So let's say I have a 9-year-old named Sam. He's not feeling well. I want to keep him home. There's all types of challenges for parents at that. When you do the testing on Wednesday, will that be a continual? Because there hasn't been a lot of local testing. The health department seems to be concentrating on getting vaccines out. So how often you're going to have those parents on the cusp of, well, I have to get a test, I have to get it verified. What are you requiring and what's going to be available?
So our testing is asymptomatic testing. So if we have children or staff members that are displaying symptoms, they need to go get tested at their doctor's office. Our biggest message that we need to make clear is that if parents have children that do not feel well or displaying symptoms, please do not send them to school. Same with our staff. We're telling our staff, if you do not feel good, please do not come into school. Go get tested. So if a child is displaying symptoms, please do not send them to school. Get them tested, get a negative COVID test, and give that to the nurse.
And are those readily available other than at your local doctor?
Yes, and they are available, and we can help with that. Again, we would rather you go to your own doctor, but we also work with East Hill, and we can help with that process. But the other piece of it is if you get your child tested, please do not send them to school the next day without the results. And this has already happened on a couple of occasions. Parents had to come and pick their children back up because they were positive. So please, once you get the test done, wait until you get that negative result and then have your child come back to school.
All right, last question was texted to me. Were there penalty clauses for the construction if people didn't hit deadlines?
That we are working on right now. We actually have a meeting going on right now without me there. Actually, I'll be honest, the construction managers asked me not to be at the meeting because I lost my mind a couple of times. And so they wanted to actually get some answers and work done. So I was actually asked not to be at the meeting. So they're working those pieces out for us. My biggest piece that I have our construction managers working with is getting a schedule of events so that our teachers and our administrators know when work is going to be done in their classrooms and those type of things. The penalties are going to be very difficult because of COVID and the delays of materials and the shortage of workforce, but our people will continue to push that piece as well.
By the way, Provost Cantor was very happy to hear that you could tell somebody higher up not to be at a meeting. So we'll see if that can go. So, gentlemen, thank you on behalf of the Wednesday Morning Roundtable for helping us kick off our new season. We appreciate both Jeff Perazzola and Dr. Brian Durant for all the work they do. They're not only members of the Wednesday Morning Roundtable, but they've done a great job presenting to us today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Some just quick housekeeping. We do want to again thank the church for allowing us. Oh, sorry. I'm sorry. I didn't know we had any questions. I was looking out there to see. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Guy.
All right. Sorry.
Good morning, everyone. This isn't a question, but this is a grateful thank you, recognition to Cayuga Community College President Brian Durant. On behalf of the community, Brian Durant saw the recognition and the need for the Certified Alcohol and Substance Abuse Counselor Training Program to return to CCC. It's a much-needed program. Locally, our treatment providers have lost counselors through attrition, retirement, other circumstances. We need to fill that gap. I'm fortunate to have won a scholarship to attend this training program, along with 9 of my other classmates. We got a wonderful instructor, and when we do graduate in 2022, December, we are going to be working here in the community throughout our treatment providers, such as CHAD, Cayuga County Mental Health Center, Nick's Right for Friends, to assist with our local residents who are suffering from the alcohol substance abuse addiction that they have. So thank you again, Dr. Durant. On behalf of the community, I just want to put a little shout out to Ray Bazzari, Director of Community Services, and along with the treatment providers, the executive directors throughout our community who advocated for this program to return to CCC. There was a gap there for a while, but we're very fortunate to have it back. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Donovan. Thank you, Mr. Donovan. And again, we want to thank the church for opening its doors to us and being here. Again, want to thank Tony Franciscelli and Tompkins Trust for their continual support of the Wednesday Morning Roundtable. It has been crucial to us, and we appreciate the bank's support, as well as the Allen and Emerson Foundations and Wegmans. Next month, we'll be having our annual Candidates Forum. This time, we're concentrating on the Auburn City Council. 2 seats are up this year. Terry Cuddy and Debbie McCormick. Councilor McCormick has decided not to run for re-election, and so far we have 2 of the candidates, Jenny Kent, who's a member of the Wednesday Morning Roundtable, and legislator Tim Lattimore have agreed to participate, and so we'll be back here, I believe, on the 20th of October. We also have some future programs for you on the arts, medical issues locally, as well as we're going to do a program on demographics from the census and where Cayuga County stands. A reminder that we combine the November and December programs. So we'll be here on December 8th with a great program that'll involve downtown and local businesses. So there is no November program. We combine it so that we're earlier in there. We would remind you that if you would please return, I guess we're not using pinned name tags, so you don't have to worry about that. But fill out the surveys. I know there's you were given a tag. If you want to ask a question for next month, we'll take them as well. I do want to thank the Wednesday Morning Roundtable board that includes Laura Coburn, Stephanie DeVito, Stephanie Hutchinson, Susan Martini, Meg O'Connell, Robert Achenbaugh, Ed Cato, Tom Minicucci, and Chris Nusarino, who I know was here in the back. Please, if you have ideas for future programs, please let them know. We hope you have a great day. We'll see you on October 20th, and be safe out there. Thank you.